They say you can spend half a lifetime with someone and still never really know them. I thought I had built everything the right way: a loyal marriage, two incredible sons, a quiet, honest life in Portland. I believed that love, once given freely, would always be enough. I was wrong. When I discovered Caroline, the woman, I built my world around betraying everything we had. It shattered me, not because of the affair itself, but because of the lies, the coldness, the realization that somewhere along the way, respect had died and I hadn't even noticed. I stood at a crossroads: let the betrayal define me, or let it forge me into something stronger. This isn't a story about revenge. It's not even a story about anger. It's a story about survival, about rebuilding, about learning that sometimes the best thing you can do is to close the door gently, walk away with your dignity intact, and never look back. If you've ever loved someone who forgot how to love you in return, then this story is for you. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your life to be here to listen, to walk through this with me. You didn't have to click. You didn't have to care, but you did. And that means more than you know. This isn't just a story about heartbreak. It's about standing back up when the world knocks you down. It's about rediscovering your own worth when someone else forgets it. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever had to rebuild from ashes you didn't create, then maybe, just maybe, you'll find a piece of your own strength inside these words. So take a deep breath with me. Set everything else aside for a moment. Let's dig in. She refused for 20 years, then did it twice in 1 week with a smirk. I asked why. She just chuckled. That's when I decided it was time for the ultimate revenge. People say you can spend half a lifetime with someone and still never truly know them. I used to laugh at that until 2 months ago. My name is Ethan McAllister. At 52, I'd built what most would call a respectable life. I'm a theater architect at a firm in Portland, Oregon, a cozy home in the suburbs. Father to 2 grown sons, both off making their own mark in Seattle. I've always been a stable one. Loyal, grounded, dependable. I wasn't the flashy husband, but I was the man you could always count on. For 27 years, I stayed true to my wife, Caroline. She's 51 now, an interior designer with a gift for making any house feel like home. When we met, I was drawn to her calm confidence, her elegance. Caroline was never overly affectionate, especially in private moments. But I honored her limits. We built a life from scratch: careers, a family, memories stitched together like an old quilt. To everyone around us, we were the perfect couple, the ones others envied. It was a quiet Thursday night when I finally asked her the question I'd been biting back for weeks. The soft glow of the fireplace lit the room as she scrolled her phone, detached as ever. "Can I ask you something?" My voice almost cracked. In the memo, she murmured, barely glancing up. "Why the sudden change in the bedroom? You started doing things you spent 20 years saying you hated." She paused, set her phone down, then laughed an odd, hollow sound. "You're not complaining, are you?" I kept my voice steady. "No, I'm just wondering why now." She pulled the throw blanket tighter around herself and said nothing. That silence told me everything. I pressed on, maybe too hard. "You're like a whole different woman now. Almost like when you were younger." The words barely left my mouth before she stood up sharply. "If you don't like it," she snapped, "we could go right back to how I was before." Then she stormed upstairs, leaving me alone with a hollow ache in my chest. And that, my friends, was the moment I realized she hadn't changed for me at all. She changed for someone else. And I was about to change everything. I stayed perfectly still, watching Caroline retreat. Just as her fingers brushed the doorknob, I spoke calm, deliberate. "It's fine," I said. "I'll know everything by tomorrow morning anyway." She froze mid-step, her head tilted slightly, tension radiating off her. "What did you say?" I stared straight at her back, my voice, even though my chest felt like it was about to crack open. "The private investigator I hired 8 weeks ago. His final report lands on my desk first thing in the morning." Caroline didn't move for a second. It was like someone had sucked all the air out of the room. Then, in a blur of motion, she slammed the door. Seconds later, she was back, hammering on the wood, sobbing, begging, her voice cracking, her words incoherent. For the first time in 27 years, I didn't answer her. Not because I hated her, because I needed the truth more than I needed her lies. Alone in her marital bed, I stared blankly at the ceiling. Tears slid silently down both sides of my face, soaking into the pillow without a sound. The weight in my chest was unbearable, like drowning in my own skin. But beneath all that grief, something new was taking shape, sharp, cold, righteous. Tomorrow, the answers would come. Tonight, the morning had its moment. At 2:42 a.m., I opened my eyes, though it would be a lie to say I'd slept at all. They burned with exhaustion. My throat was dry as paper. The house was silent except for the low hum of the heating vents. Moving with mechanical precision, I grabbed the gym bag I had packed the evening before. No note, no explanation left behind. What could I possibly say that wasn't just another half-truth to add to the pile? The streets of Portland were nearly deserted, the city soaked in misty drizzle as I made my way to the 24-hour gym downtown. For the next 2 hours, I punished myself, lifting until my arms shook, running until my legs buckled. I welcomed the physical pain. It was easier to endure than the agony inside my chest. In the locker room shower, I stood under the scalding water, letting it pound my shoulders, letting it wash away the last fragile pieces of denial. After it was sweat or tears circling the drain, I didn't care anymore. I changed into the clean slacks and button-down shirt I had kept hung in the car, neatly pressed. At 6:10 a.m., I slid into a booth at Penny's Diner, a few blocks from my office building. The early crowd was filtering in construction workers with worn caps, young execs glued to their phones. I stared at my buzzing phone. 41 missed calls, 18 new messages, all from Caroline. I flipped the screen face down without opening a single one. Coffee, sugar? The waitress asked, lifting a pot. Yeah, and don't let it run dry, I said, my voice barely recognizable. After she poured, I thumbed out a quick text to Tom Granger, my deputy at the firm. Need to meet. Pennies. Before office hours if you can swing it. Then I waited for coffee, for truth, and for whatever came next. Tom replied almost instantly, be there in 15. True to his word, he slid into the booth at Penny's Diner 14 minutes later, his sharp eyes scanning my worn-out appearance before he even sat down. Christ, Ethan, Tom muttered, setting his coffee down. You look like you've been through a damn war. I gave him the short version, Caroline's sudden shift in behavior, the blow-up the night before, the private investigator I had hired 8 weeks ago. So you don't actually have proof yet? Tom asked, stirring sugar into his coffee without looking up. Meeting the PI at 8, I said, checking my watch. But deep down, I already know what he's going to tell me. Tom leaned back, his face grim. He'd lived through his own brutal divorce 5 years ago, the kind that leaves scars now. One sees. You know how I found out about Linda? He said, voice low. I shook my head. STD, he said bluntly. After almost 19 years together, she gave me something she picked up from some gym trainer. She even tried flipping it on me at first. Said I must have been the one cheating. He gave a bitter, humorless laugh. Classic projection. She folded as soon as I slapped the lab report down on the table. I winced, the pain in his words cutting deeper because of the quiet way he said them. I'm sorry, man, I said. He shook his head. Best thing that ever happened to me, looking back. Hard lessons shape you. Tom leaned in closer, voice steady. Listen, Ethan, the cheating itself? That's just the surface. It's the lying. It's the looking you dead in the eye, day after day, pretending like nothing's wrong. That's what breaks a man. I nodded, something sharp and cold forming deep inside me. Hope had died somewhere around 3 a.m. Now, I just needed the truth to bury whatever was left. You shouldn't go home tonight, Tom said after a pause. Take my place up at Tanner's Lake. It's empty till June. Keys under the grill cover. I'll think about it, I muttered, though my mind was already racing elsewhere. If the morning's meeting confirmed what I suspected, I wasn't planning to retreat. I was planning to fight back. I paid the bill, clapped Tom on the shoulder, and stepped into the crisp Portland morning. The sky was crystal clear, a sharp contrast to the war brewing inside me. I slid into my car, punched the detective's address into the GPS, and pulled into traffic. One thought hammered through my mind, over and over, steady as a drumbeat. If this is the battlefield you chose, Caroline, I'm the one who's going to win. The detective's office was tucked into a nondescript brick building downtown, wedged between a tax consultant and an orthodontist. Frank Ramirez was a retired Portland PD veteran with salt and pepper hair and tired, sharp eyes that had clearly seen it all. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "It's all there," he said, sliding a thick manila envelope across the scuffed desk. Close to 100 pages. Photos, transcripts, call logs, text message captures. 8 weeks of surveillance. I stared at the envelope, but I didn't move to touch it yet. "Mr. McAllister," Ramirez said, his voice steady, almost kind. "I've been doing this a long time. 23 years. I know it feels like your world's about to collapse, but believe me, whatever's in there, it's better to know than to wonder." My fingers felt stiff as I finally reached out and cracked the envelope open. The first photo showed Caroline stepping inside a vacant house with a big for sale sign, still posted out front. Nothing damning. Not yet. The second shot, Caroline laughing, head tossed back, hand brushing the shoulder of a man, probably in his early 40s. Big frame, tailored jacket, a gleaming Rolex flashing on his wrist. The typed caption below the photo read, "Lucas Bryant, another agent from the boutique reel estate firm where Caroline worked." By the fifth photo, they were kissing right there, half hidden behind the carport of another empty property. They used the vacant listings, Ramirez explained quietly. Easiest place. No nosy neighbors. No cameras. He flipped a few more pages for me. They meet up 2, sometimes 3 times a week. Sometimes she goes to his loft in the Pearl District. His wife's a corporate attorney, travels out of state every Monday through Thursday. I kept turning the pages, each one driving another spike deeper into the hollow pit where my marriage used to live. Then came the transcripts. "We planted a mic under the dashboard of her SUV," Ramirez said. "Oregon's a one-party consent state for recordings." The printed conversations blurred in my hands. "Caroline, he still has no clue. Ethan trusts me too much. Lucas, ever think of telling him? Caroline, and give this up? Hell no." Another recording talked about some exclusive parties Lucas used to attend. Caroline giggling about it, making jokes that turned my stomach. I sat in my truck for almost half an hour after leaving Ramirez's office. The envelope sat heavy in the passenger's seat, untouched now. I didn't feel pain anymore. I didn't feel anything. Had I ever really known her? The drive toward the Willamette University campus took about 40 minutes. Spring was in full bloom. Students sprawled out on the green lawns, tossing footballs, laughing under a bright, oblivious sky. It all felt obscene. I texted Ben. "At Student Union. Need to see you and Luke? Important." They arrived about 15 minutes apart, Ben first, still in his mechanical engineering lab coat. Safety goggles pushed up on his forehead. Luke showed up shortly after, arms full of thick medical textbooks, the stethoscope still looped around his neck from his hospital rounds. My sons, the only real thing I still trusted in my life. "Dad, you look awful," Ben said, cutting straight to it, so much like me when I was his age. "What's going on?" I tried to answer, but the words jammed in my throat. Instead, I reached out and gripped both of their hands. And after weeks of holding it all in, I broke. The tears came without warning, silent, but relentless. The boys exchanged a worried look before pulling their chairs closer, creating a protective circle around me. We sat there like that for a few minutes, until I finally found the strength to pull myself together. Luke handed me a napkin from the table. I wiped my face, clear my throat. "I'm sorry," I rasped. "I didn't mean to fall apart." "Dad, you're scaring us," Luke said, his voice low. "Tell us what's going on." I drew a shaky breath. "Your mom, Caroline, she's been having an affair with a man from her office. His name's Lucas Bryant." Ben's face darkened instantly. "Are you sure?" Without speaking, I slid a photo across the table, the least graphic one. I had Caroline and Lucas kissing behind a for sale sign. Ben stared at it, jaw tightening. Luke's eyes welled up, his mouth trembling. "I have all of it," I said quietly. "Photos, audio recordings, messages, but I'm not showing you anymore. You shouldn't have to see it." Ben shook his head. "We don't need to. I believe you." Luke wiped his tears away and asked in a small voice, "Are you going to divorce Mom?" The question hit me harder than anything else that morning. I swallowed hard. I don't see another path. I still love the woman I thought she was. But the woman who could do this. I shook my head. She's not someone I recognize anymore. Just then, Luke's phone buzzed on the table, Caroline's face flashing across the screen. Ben grabbed it before Luke could react, answered calmly, and said into the receiver, "If you need someone to cry to, call Lucas." Then he ended the call without another word. I reached across the table, gripping both of them by the hands again. No matter what your mother's done, she's still your mother. Don't hate her, but don't lie to yourselves either. Respect her, but don't become blind the way I was. Luke nodded silently, tears streaking down his cheeks. Ben gripped my hand so tightly it actually hurt. "What happens now?" Luke asked, voice raw. "Now," I said, feeling a strange, unfamiliar calm wash over me. "We start over." I hugged them both tightly one last time, promising I would call later, then headed toward my next destination, my parents' house in the suburbs of Lake Oswego. The modest craftsman where I'd grown up hadn't changed much. Same creaky porch swing. Same old maple tree shedding its leaves onto the cracked driveway. The same sense of security I had once tried so hard to build for my own family. Mom answered the door before I even knocked, as if she'd been standing behind it, waiting. "Ethan, honey, what's wrong?" Margaret McAllister. My mother had always read me like an open book. "Is Dad home?" I asked, stepping into the familiar foyer. "In his den," she said, her voice worried. "Ethan, you're scaring me." I found my father exactly where I'd expected in his warm recliner, glasses perched low. On his nose, half-finished crossword puzzle folded across his lap. Walter McAllister, retired school superintendent, a man of few words but unshakable principle. He took one look at me, and silently he set the newspaper aside. "Caroline's been cheating on me," I said, without softening the blow. "For months. I'd be longer." I heard Mom gasp quietly behind me. Dad's face didn't change, but his blue eyes sharpened like steel. "I hired a private investigator." "I have proof," I added. Mom sank into the armchair beside his. "Oh, Ethan, are you sure?" "Maybe." Her voice trembled. "Maybe he pressured her, manipulated her." "Mom," I said, voice steady but firm, "Caroline wasn't pressured. She was willing. Very willing." The words tasted like acid in my mouth. "And you know what cuts the deepest?" I continued. "It's not even a betrayal. It's realizing she doesn't see me as worth even basic respect anymore." Dad nodded slowly, speaking only when the silence had stretched. "If respect's gone," he said, "everything else is just acting." His words landed hard. 27 years of my life, all reduced to performance and pretense. "What are you going to do?" Mom whispered, wiping her eyes. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed sharply. Dolores Bryant, Caroline's mother. I showed them the screen. "I should take this." The conversation was short and sharp. Dolores demanded I come to their house immediately. Her voice sharp, defensive, rehearsed. When I hung up, I turned to my parents. They deserved to hear the truth from me. Dad stood and clasped my shoulder firmly. "Remember who you are, son." The Bryants lived in a sprawling modern home tucked into one of Lake Oswego's most exclusive neighborhoods. Caroline's father, Howard Bryant, had built his fortune flipping commercial properties across the Pacific Northwest, the very connection that had originally helped Caroline climb the real estate ladder. I'd always felt a little out of place around her family despite my own success, my steady career. Dolores opened the heavy oak door with a skull that could have stopped traffic. Howard stood behind her, arms folded tightly across his chest. His expression was one of thinly veiled hostility. "What exactly are you accusing our daughter of?" Dolores snapped before I could even step inside. I stayed calm. "It's not an accusation," I said evenly, "when there's proof." Howard stepped forward, voice low but firm. "She's having an affair? You have evidence." I nodded, pulling a slim folder from my leather briefcase, a version of the detective's report, with the worst photos removed. There were some things parents should never have to see, no matter how angry I was. Howard took the file. Dolores paced like a caged animal. "So because of one mistake," she hissed, "you're ready to destroy a 27-year marriage? Throw away everything?" Something in me cracked, but I kept my voice cool. You're wrong, Dolores. This wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern. A lifestyle. 100 conscious choices. I placed another stack of papers on a coffee table, this one more raw. Printouts of text messages between Caroline and her so-called best friend, Nora Whitaker. The chief enabler. Read it, I said, not unkindly. See for yourselves who's been whispering in her ear. Howard adjusted his glasses and leaned in. The words were damning. Nora praising Lucas, raving about how Caroline deserved this escape. Calling her things like, "Girl, you'll never forget what a real man feels like." And Caroline's reply, the one that gutted me all over again. I've never met anyone who makes me forget right and wrong this easily. I just want more. Dolores sank down into the nearest chair, visibly shaken. Howard closed the file without a word, disappointment carved deep into every feature. I rose to my feet, adjusting my jacket. I didn't come here to ask for permission to leave Caroline, I said. I came to inform you out of respect. Dolores opened her mouth, but Howard silenced her with a quiet, heavy look. At the threshold, I turned back once, my voice steady. And if Nora ever contacts me again, I'll make every message public. To her husband, her employer, her church, everyone. I didn't wait for a response. I closed the door behind me and inhaled the crisp, Oregon evening air. For the first time in months, the world felt clean. My phone buzzed sharply in my pocket. It was Caroline calling again. Probably the 100th time today. I declined a call without hesitation and fired off a text to Tom instead. I'll take you up on that lake house offer. As I pulled away from the Bryant sprawling estate, something unexpected stirred deep. Inside me, relief. Beneath the wreckage, the betrayal, the anger, the hurt, a faint glimmer of peace was starting to spark. It was over. Or at least, it would be soon. I pulled into a deserted church parking lot a few miles away and sat in the silence, staring at my phone. There was one more person I needed to see. One more piece left to complete this grim puzzle. Melissa Bryant, Lucas Bryant's wife. The detective's report had detailed her weekend routine carefully. Every Saturday morning, she brought their 2 kids to Riverbend Park, a popular spot in the suburbs where neighborhood parents gathered while their children played. A public place. Safe. Low drama, but enough privacy for a quiet, necessary conversation. I swung by my house first. Took a long, scalding shower. Changed into clean khakis and a sky blue button-down, simple, unthreatening. I wasn't there to cause a scene. I just needed the truth to land where it belonged. When I pulled into Riverbend Park, it was alive with weekend energy. Little league games on the diamonds. Teenagers skating circles around the parking lot. These spread out on picnic blankets, laughing, shouting, living their lives. I spotted the mothers' group, easily a cluster of women near the playground, their kids, darting from swings to slides. Melissa wasn't hard to find. Petite, auburn hair, chopped into a neat bob. Eyes that stayed locked on her children like a hawk, the kind of vigilance you don't learn unless you've been hurt before. As I approached, I saw the moment she recognized me. Confusion flickered across her face, then cold understanding. She paled. A tall woman with sharp features stepped protectively between us. "Can I help you?" She asked coolly, a tone that made it clear she meant anything but help. "I need to speak with Melissa," I said, calm, hands visible. "Privately." "I don't think so," the woman shot back, crossing her arms. "Jenna, it's okay," Melissa said quietly, stepping forward. She met my eyes squarely. "You're Caroline's husband." It wasn't a question. "I am," I replied. "Ethan McAllister." 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Jenna didn't budge at first, but Melissa placed a hand gently on her arm. "It's fine," she said again. "Jenna, can you keep an eye on the kids?" Melissa asked quietly. She led me over to a wooden picnic table beneath a sprawling maple tree, far enough from the other moms that we wouldn't be overheard. Silent ears streaked down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. She just sat there, breathing through the pain. "I have evidence," I said, getting straight to the point. "About Caroline and Lucas. I'm not going to go into ugly details. I need to ask you something." Melissa gave a brutal laugh, one that sounded like it hurt. "Is this the first time Lucas has done something like this?" I asked. She shook her head, the sadness hardening into something sharper. "Third time," she said bitterly. That I know about, anyway. She looked away toward the playground, blinking fast. After our second baby was born, something changed. She got obsessed with this trainer complex. Always had to be the one teaching someone. First it was me, then two different women in his firm. I hadn't expected that level of honesty from a complete stranger. I'm sorry, I said sincerely. I tried to forgive him the first time. We tried marriage counseling after the second. Melissa continued. But this time, she shook her head slowly, voice tight. This time with your wife, it's different. He's not even trying to hide it. She glanced at me, her voice dropping to a raw whisper. He brought her to our house, Ethan, while I was visiting my mother. Their car was still in the driveway when I got home. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. I brought something for you, I said, pulling an envelope from my jacket, a clean copy of the PI's findings. Only open it if you need it. I asked, handed straight to a lawyer. Melissa accepted the envelope with shaking hands. Thank you, she said hoarsely. We sat in heavy silence, two strangers stitched together by betrayal. After a minute, Melissa wiped her face and stood. I need a favor, she said. I want to pack a few things. Stay at my sister's for a while. But Lucas, he might be home. Would you come with me? I hesitated for only a second. Of course. As we walked to our cars, she added, my dad, Warren, is already nearby, and my cousin Marcus is waiting at the door. I followed her silver SUV through winding streets to a pristine colonial house, trimmed, hedges lining the driveway. Sure enough, a heavy-set pickup was parked across the street. Inside, an older man, military buzz cut, steel gaze kept watch. Marcus, a younger man built like a linebacker, stood by the front walk. Lucas was out front mowing the lawn shirtless, sun beating down. The second our cars pulled up, Lucas killed the mower and stormed toward us, his face twisted with rage. You've been following me, he shouted, pointing at me. Realization flickered across Lucas's face. You hired someone to spy on me, he demanded, voice rising. I hired someone to watch my wife, I replied calmly. You were just a bonus feature. Lucas's face darkened, a flush of anger spreading up his neck. She came after me, man, he shouted, almost pleading now. I didn't force her to do anything. I felt nothing but a strange, steady calm. Then, thank you, I said, my voice even, for helping me make up my mind about Caroline. Lucas tried to shove past Marcus to get to me, but Marcus was ready. The big man gave him a hard push, sending Lucas sprawling onto the manicured front lawn. This is over, Marcus said flatly. Warren had gotten out of his truck by then, standing silently, arms folded, his presence alone enough to keep the peace. Melissa touched my arm lightly. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. You should go now. We can handle the rest. I nodded and turned toward my car. Before I could reach it, Warren intercepted me, his hand extended. You're a good man, he said, voice low. You're not alone in this. Melissa could use someone who understands. I shook his hand firmly, feeling a strange surge of kinship toward these people I barely knew, a family held together by loyalty in the face of betrayal. Take care of her, I said simply. As I pulled away, I caught one last glimpse in the rearview mirror. Lucas slumped on the lawn, beaten in every way that mattered. Melissa walking into the house, Marcus at her side. Warren standing guard near the sidewalk. A broken marriage, crumbling right in front of me. A mirror of my own. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Lake House code 5280. Keys and her planter on back deck. Take all the time you need. It was time to disappear for a while. A week at the cabin on Silverwood Lake cleared my head. The little place perched right at the water's edge became my sanctuary. Mel Caroline, Mel Lucas, melodrama. Just the slow lap of water against the dock and the mournful calls of loons across the mist-shrouded mornings. Then the call came. Dolores. Ethan, you promised you'd speak to Caroline one more time, she said, softer now. She's not doing well. I had promised. Reluctantly. I need a few more days, I told her. Of course, she said. Her voice carried none of the usual sharpness. She'll wait. 3 days later, I sent the message. Come to the lake house. Saturday. Noon. We'll talk. Thank you, she whispered over the line, voice trembling. I spent the morning getting ready. Not mentally, my mind was clear. Physically, I set the patio table carefully, two simple place settings, sandwiches neatly arranged, a bowl of cut-up fruit between them. I chilled a craft beer for myself and set out a bottle of Pinot Grigio for her. This wouldn't be a fight. It would be civil, adult, final. Caroline arrived exactly at noon punctual, as always. She wore faded jeans and a pale blue blouse, her hair pulled back into a loose, no-nonsense ponytail. When exhausted and worn down, she was still beautiful, the woman who had once been my entire world, now a stranger I knew too well. Nice place, she said, her voice too light, too forced. She glanced around the deck, the lake glinting silver behind me, her nerves almost visible. I poured her a glass of wine and cracked open my beer. Neither of us touched the food. The silence stretched between us, 27 years, collapsing into a hollow, awkward distance. Finally, she spoke. "I'm terrified, Ethan," she said, voice breaking. "Terrified of losing everything." I said nothing, just took a slow sip of my beer and waited. "I did something so incredibly stupid," she whispered. It started, I don't know, curiosity, maybe wanting to feel alive again. Desired. Like when we were young. She twisted her wedding ring around her finger, still wearing it. It got out of control. I kept thinking I could stop, but then I didn't want to. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and raw. "I'll do anything to rebuild what we had," she said. "Anything you ask. Counseling. Transparency. Anything. Just please don't give up on us." I set my beer down carefully, feeling strangely detached, like I was watching the scene from somewhere above. "I can forgive you, Caroline," I said slowly. "Not for your sake. For Ben's. For Luke's. And for mine." Her tears spilled over, her shoulders shaking. "But forgiveness," I continued, voice steady, "isn't about going back, that it's about not carrying hatred forward." She nodded, understanding at last. "This isn't negotiation," I said. "We're getting divorced. The lawyers already have the paperwork ready. From now on, we communicate through them, only about the boys or finances. And us," she whispered, her voice shattering. "There's no us," I said softly. "There's you, and there's me, two separate people who once shared a life." We sat in silence, but this time it was peaceful. Birds called from the trees, till out a soft breeze rippled across Silverwood Lake. Finally, Caroline stood, tears still tracing her cheeks. "I never stopped loving you," she said, broken. "I know," I answered quietly. It was the only truth I could give her. 7 months later, the divorce was finalized. I ended up buying the lake house from Tom's family, making it my permanent home. A quiet place. Mel echoes. Mel apologies needed. Life moved forward. Ben graduated from the University of Washington with honors and landed a job with a defense contractor up in Seattle. He called me every Sunday night without fail. Luke was accepted into Johns Hopkins Medical School, that he thrived there and eventually got engaged to one of his classmates, a quiet, kind young woman who looked at him the way every father hopes his son will be looked at. Luke stayed distant with Caroline, despite my encouragement to rebuild some kind of relationship. Caroline started dating again. On account 10, Dolores told me, a soft-spoken man with steady eyes and quiet habits. "Seems gentle," Dolores said once, in a rare phone call where we spoke more like allies than former in-laws. "Good," I said, and meant it. As for Nora Whitaker, Caroline's old confidant, she and her husband Grant packed up and left Oregon after the emails I'd sent found their way to her school's administration, his company's HR department, and their church elders. No lawsuits. Every word I sent had been the truth. Lucas Bryant didn't fare much better. He resigned from his real estate firm after HR cornered him with evidence. Melissa got full custody of their kids. She sold their house and moved back to Michigan, closer to her family. Sometimes on quiet mornings, I found myself hoping she was doing okay, hoping she found peace, the same way I was learning to. 2 years later, at a graduation party for a mutual friend's son, I ran into Jenna Ellison, Melissa's cousin, the same woman who once stood between me and a stranger's heartbreak in a crowded park. "Ethan McAllister," she said, laughter in her voice and new smile lines at her eyes. Have you been holding up? We talked like two veterans of the same war, trading stories from opposite trenches. Jenna had divorced too. Her own marriage had cracked after the dust from Lucas's betrayal settled. But she didn't carry bitterness. Only a calm, kind of strength I recognized immediately. One slow summer afternoon, Jenna appeared at my office door. She knocked once, stepped in, and sat on the couch. "Just passing by," she said with a soft grin. I wasn't the same man I'd been 5 years ago. More guarded, more deliberate, but still a man who knew when something good was worth approaching carefully. This story doesn't end with a grand romance or dramatic second chances. It ends with something better: peace, self-respect, wholeness, in the quiet understanding that sometimes the best chapters of your life come after you. Finally close the ones that hurt. If you made it all the way here, I want to say thank you. Not just for listening to my story, but for walking beside me through the worst and best parts of it. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever had to rebuild from the ashes, then you know. It's not just about surviving. It's about choosing to live again, but this time with your eyes wide open. I'd love to hear from you. What would you have said to me at the lake that day? Would you have handled the confrontation the same way, calm, steady, or would you have let the anger loose? Drop a comment below. I want to hear your perspective, your advice, your experiences. Your words matter more than you realize, not just to me, but to others who are going through their own battles right now. And if I can leave you with anything, it's this: never confuse forgiveness with forgetting. You can forgive someone without ever letting them hurt you again. You can choose peace without reopening old wounds. You can walk away without hatred and still never look back. Respect yourself enough to close the chapters that no longer deserve your story. You owe it to yourself to protect your heart the way you protect the people you love. The world will try to tell you that moving on quietly isn't strong. But I'll tell you it's the strongest thing you'll ever do. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever stood where I stood, if you're building your life again, brick by steady brick, thank you for taking the time to read this story. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, like, and share in the comments. Remember, history is a witness to the past, a light of truth, a living memory, a teacher of life, a messenger of antiquity, and see you soon.